Somewhere right now, someone is trying to rebuild their entire life in one weekend. New gym routine, new diet, new sleep schedule, new morning ritual, all starting Monday. And by Thursday, most of it is already gone. That is not a willpower problem, that is a math problem. You cannot leap from where you are to where you want to be in one jump, and every time you try, the fall teaches your brain that change does not work for you. There is a different way. One that feels almost too small to matter and ends up rebuilding entire lives. It is called the 1% rule, and today I am going to show you exactly how to use it, without burning out the way every January resolution eventually does. You know this cycle already, because almost everyone has lived it. You decide today is the day. You wake up early, you eat clean, you write the pages, you do the workout, you meditate, you read, all in one day, powered by pure motivation. Day 2 is harder. Day 3, something comes up, a late night, a stressful morning, and you miss the workout. Day 4 you miss it again, and a small voice says you already broke the streak, so what is the point now? By day 7, the new life you built on Monday is already back to looking exactly like the old one. This is not because you are weak. It is because the plan was built for a version of you that has unlimited energy, unlimited time, and 0 bad days. That version does not exist. The real version of you has a job, a body that gets tired, and a brain that resists sudden, dramatic change, even change you actually want. So the all-or-nothing plan collapses, almost every time, and it takes your confidence down with it. Here is the idea that changes everything. Instead of trying to become 100% different overnight, you aim to become 1% better, every single day. 1% sounds almost insultingly small. That is the point. 1% is so small that skipping the excuse becomes harder than doing the thing. You cannot say you do not have time for 1%. You cannot say you are too tired for 1%. The size of the ask is small enough that your resistance barely shows up, but 1% repeated daily compounds. Improve by 1% every day for a year, and you do not end up 1% better. You end up roughly 37 times better. Because each small gain builds on the last one. That is not a motivational slogan, that is simply how compounding works, whether it is money in an account or a skill in your hands. The 1% rule is not about small effort forever. It is about small effort that stacks. Here is what makes this genuinely hard to trust. 1% does not feel like progress. After 1 week of a slightly better morning routine, you look basically the same. You feel basically the same. And part of you starts to wonder if this gentle version of change is even real change at all. That doubt is dangerous, because it pushes people right back toward the dramatic overhaul that already failed them once. If tiny steps do not feel powerful, surely bigger steps will feel more powerful faster. So the cycle restarts: big plan, early burst, collapse, guilt, repeat. The truth is that early compounding is invisible almost by design. A habit compounding at 1% a day looks flat for weeks, then it starts curving upward in a way that surprises you, and it keeps curving as long as you keep showing up. The problem is never that small steps do not work. The problem is that we quit during the invisible part, right before the curve becomes obvious, because invisible progress does not feel like anything at all. There is a second trap hiding here too. Once the flat part gets boring, the temptation is to add more. 5 minutes becomes 20, 1 page becomes a chapter, because the small version starts to feel like it is not enough. That upgrade often kills the habit, because the small version was small on purpose, built to survive tired days and bad weeks. Growing it too soon quietly turns it back into the fragile, ambitious plan that failed you before, just wearing a gentler name. Here is the principle that makes this click for good. Every time you do the 1% version of something, you are not just improving the skill, you are casting a small vote for a new identity. Someone who reads 1 page becomes slowly a reader. Someone who does 5 minutes of movement becomes slowly someone who moves. The dramatic overhaul tries to change your identity in a single day, and your brain, correctly, does not believe it. The 1% rule changes your identity through repeated evidence, one small honest vote at a time, until the new identity is simply true, because you have proven it to yourself hundreds of times over. This is why small, consistent action beats big occasional effort. It is not just about the output, it is about who you are quietly becoming proof of. One tiny repeated action at a time. So how do you rebuild your life this way, in 2026, without the burnout of another failed overhaul? 4 shifts. First, shrink the habit until it feels almost too easy. Not 30 minutes of exercise. 5. Not 10 pages of reading. 1. The habit should feel slightly embarrassing in its smallness, because that is exactly the size that survives a bad day. Second, attach the new habit to something you already do without fail. After you pour your morning coffee, you do the 1 page. After you brush your teeth at night, you do the 2 minutes of stretching. Anchoring a new action to an old, automatic one removes the need to remember or decide, which is where most habits quietly die. Third, track the streak, not the outcome. Do not measure how fit you are yet or how many pages you have read in total. Measure whether you showed up today. The streak becomes its own reward, and protecting it becomes a game your brain actually enjoys playing. Fourth, expect and plan for bad days in advance. Decide right now that on the days everything falls apart, you will still do the smallest possible version. 1 page instead of a chapter, 1 minute instead of the full session. The rule is never 0. A tiny version done on a hard day keeps the compounding alive, while a missed day resets the story your brain tells about who you are. None of these 4 shifts require extra motivation, extra time, or a special Monday to begin on. They work just as well starting on a random Wednesday in the middle of a messy week, which is usually the truest test of whether a plan can actually survive real life. Picture this time next year. None of the changes felt dramatic on any single day. You never had a heroic Monday that changed everything. But the version of you standing here, 12 months later, reads more, moves more, sleeps better, and trusts yourself in a way the old all-or-nothing cycle never allowed. The strange part is that this version of change does not burn out, because it was never a sprint to begin with. There was no finish line you were racing toward on adrenaline, just a small daily vote cast quietly, day after day, until the totals became undeniable. That is the whole idea behind the 1% rule. Rebuilding a life is not one dramatic leap. It is hundreds of small, almost boring decisions, each one small enough to actually keep. Each one compounding quietly until the life around you has genuinely changed. Here is where to start. Pick one habit you actually want and shrink it down until it feels almost too small to count. Do that tiny version today, and again tomorrow, and let the compounding do the rest. If this helped you see change differently, subscribe. I make videos like this every week for people who are done with burnout cycles and ready to build something that actually lasts. See you in the next one.